Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Level 100 Elemental Shaman Guide. My name is Tuskeh, and in this video we're going to discuss the Elemental Shaman in all of its glory, covering everything. This guide is designed for everyone. Whether you're a new player wondering what Elemental is like to play, an experienced player looking to get into the Elemental Shaman, or a veteran shaman curious about what you can do to mitigate some of the shaman's weaknesses, this guide will cover everything you need to know. You can use the links above to jump to the various sections of this guide at will. Now let's get started. The Elemental Shaman is, as the name suggests, a master of the elements. You'll be using the power of earth, air, and fire to destroy your enemies at range. With a variety of spells and multiple sources of damage at your disposal, you will rarely find yourself ill-equipped to handle a damage-dealing situation. Whether it's a single-target fight, you're being swarmed with multiple enemies, or any mixture of the two, the Elemental Shaman has a spell for the situation. Not only this, but as an Elemental Shaman, you have access to a suite of abilities that are dedicated not only to dealing damage, but to supporting your team. These powerful spells and how you use them can decide how a fight plays out, and a skilled Elemental Shaman can use all of their abilities as much as they can to both damage their enemies and support their allies. As an Elemental Shaman, you will bring passive mastery and haste to your group or raid without ever having to worry about the uptime of buffs. Additionally, you have totems. These powerful spells, iconic and unique to the shaman, provide temporary benefits to yourself and your allies. Totems can do things like redirect harmful spells, remove fear effects from your team, provide healing, debilitate enemies with roots and stuns, deal damage, or summon powerful elemental servitors to deal damage, support your team, and redirect enemy attention. As an Elemental Shaman, you're also pretty damn difficult to kill, with the ability to mitigate a lot of damage on demand, heal yourself and others around you, and if all goes wrong, you can drop what you're doing and do just enough healing to save yourself or an ally in desperate need of aid. I cannot tell you how many times I have saved groups because of a well-placed heal. Your rotation is simple and pretty easy to learn, with a lot of depth for veteran players to get into. You can go from single target to multi-target damage quickly and effectively. You also bring Bloodlust with you, the most powerful raid cooldown in the game. Hands down. Raid leaders will praise you for good, smart use of Bloodlust, and in combination with your other abilities, you become instrumental to your group's success. Most importantly, the Elemental Shaman is fun to play, with an effective damage rotation for those just seeking to be a damage dealer, and a suite of tools available to those who wish to become a problem solver. We'll talk more about this in another section of the guide, but it cannot be overstated that the Shaman's ability to handle situations is extremely strong. So, just what spells will you be using as an Elemental Shaman? Well, at all times, as you cast your spells, the Elemental Shaman will call up bolts of earth from the ground. This is called Molten Earth, and it's a passive effect that deals extra damage for you, and you can actually deal quite a large amount of damage very fast. One of the most iconic spells for the Elemental Shaman is Lava Burst, an extremely hard-hitting ability that always critically strikes. Another important ability, Flame Shock, places a damage over time effect on your target. If your Lava Burst hits a target with Flame Shock applied, then the Lava Burst's damage is increased by 50%. Additionally, Flame Shock has a chance each time it deals damage to make your Lava Burst reset its cooldown and become instant cast. These two spells are very important. Next up, Lightning Bolt. This is your filler spell, the one you'll be casting the most. It's a simple cast time spell that deals damage at range to a single target. You also have Chain Lightning, one of the finest looking spells in the game. This deals damage to multiple enemies and can be cast repeatedly for a lot of damage. This makes up half of the combo you'll be using for most of your multiple target damage. Now for the second half, Earthquake. After a short cast, you'll deal damage to multiple enemies over 10 seconds in a target area. The more targets your last Chain Lightning hit, the more damage Earthquake will do. You also have Ascendance, your big cooldown. This turns you into a fiery flame ascendant for 15 seconds, removes the cooldown on your Lava Burst, and turns your Chain Lightning into Lava Beam, which deals much more damage. You also have Bloodlust, a hugely powerful 30% haste increase for all party and raid members, lasting for 40 seconds. Additionally, you have Lightning Shield, which is an hour-long buff that deals damage to enemies that hit you. Although it may sound irrelevant, it's not. Each time you deal damage with lots of your different spells, you have a chance to gain multiple stacks of Lightning Shield, stacking up to 20. Your next ability, Earth Shock, which is normally just an instant cast damage spell, will consume your extra stacks of Lightning Shield to do absurd amounts of damage. The generation and consumption of these extra stacks of Lightning Shield is called Fulmination. You also have Searing Totem, which is your staple totem for dealing damage. It shoots bolts of fire at your enemies. You have Unleash Flame, which is an instant cast spell that increases the damage of your next fire spell by 40% and temporarily increases your movement speed. This is useful to cast while moving. you have Fire Elemental Totem, one of your big totem cooldowns. This summons a fire elemental that will deal absurd amounts of damage to your enemies. Finally, you have Thunderstorm. This deals damage to enemies around you and knocks them away. While this may sound bad, good use of Thunderstorm can save lives. These aren't all of the Elemental Shaman's abilities, but these are the ones you'll be using a lot. Now, let's move on. So let's quickly go over the various things that have changed between level 90 and level 100 for the Elemental Shaman. We have a variety of new enhancements to our abilities, so let's quickly go over them, how important they are, and how they change things. The least important of our enhancements is Improved Reincarnation, which increases the health that you reincarnate with by 50%, which means you'll pop back up at about 70% health. This is great, as it means that most of the time you can just instantly jump back to your feet mid-fight without having to worry too much about what you'll be getting into. Of course, always check to make sure you don't instantly die after you self-res. Make sure the thing that killed you is gone before you pop back up. Next, Enhanced Unleash. This makes our Unleash Flame increase our movement speed by 30% for 4 seconds. Very helpful for when you have to move, so make sure you use Unleash Flame to increase your movement speed when you have to be moving quickly. Next up, Improved Lightning Shield, which grants us 5 additional stacks of the spell, up to a cap of 20, and it allows Lava Burst to grant stacks of Fulmination. This just makes our Fulmination stack faster, and most importantly, it will now stack during Ascendance. Finally, Enhanced Chain Lightning, which grants you a buff for each enemy hit by your Chain Lightning or Lava Beam. This buff increases the damage of your next Earthquake by 60% per stack, ignore the fact that it says 40, it's actually 60, up to a cap of 5 and an increase of 300% damage on your next Earthquake. This buff will not decrease in stacks if your Chain Lightning hits fewer enemies than the stack number, but it is important that you always throw in a Chain Lightning before you cast your Earthquake. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of the guide, I want to take a moment to discuss where the Elemental Shaman stands in terms of its capabilities. As of this recording, the Elemental Shaman is still underperforming compared to other damage dealers. And yes, this is unfortunately a big deal. This has nothing to do with individual skills. Our spells just don't hit hard enough, they take too long to cast, and they don't multi-strike enough. We've already been bumped up once, and I would not be surprised to see more changes coming to the Elemental Shaman in Warlords of Draenor's first content patch, 6.1. I will include an annotation on screen now if there are any significant changes, and if the changes merit a video, I will include a link here. However, all of this does not mean that you should not be playing an Elemental Shaman. Of course not. The Elemental Shaman, while it is a little bit weak now, offers a lot of potential when it comes to scaling. Traditionally, the Shaman as a class has always been weak at the start of an expansion, and over time they just get stronger and stronger until they become next to unstoppable at the end of an expansion. In Warlords of Draenor, this is going to be due in part to multi-strike. This stat that gives you a chance to duplicate your spells is incredibly strong for us. Not only do we gain a flat 20% multi-strike chance, but we gain more multi-strike from the stat than any other class. And our Lava Burst can multi-strike more than twice, meaning that as we gear up and get stronger, we will exponentially increase in power. Not only this, but the Elemental Shaman has a suite of abilities that can support a group. We'll go over this in more detail later on, but if you would like to learn more about the state of the Shaman, you can click on screen now to go to my video dedicated to it. Don't worry, it won't close this guide, it will open in a new tab. Let's talk basic gearing now. First and foremost, as a shaman, you wear mail armor and you gain a 5% intellect bonus for doing so. Cloth, leather, and plate are a no-go, and you should not wear them. A slightly better piece of gear does not make up for the loss of 5% of your primary stat. Before we go into your stat priorities though, it's important to remember that reforging, a system that dominated Mists of Pandaria's gear, is no longer in the game, and as such you can only customize your gear with gems, enchants, and the occasional piece of re-rolling stats. Additionally, a new gear system has been put in place. All primary pieces of gear that actually shows up on your character, so your head, shoulders, chest, wrist, gloves, belt, leggings, and boots, all share stats with other specs and classes, and changes depending on who wears them. So, a pair of mail boots would offer you intellect, which is your primary stat, but only if you were in elemental spec. The same pair of boots would offer an enhancement shaman, or a hunter, agility instead. Don't worry about the grayed out agility bonus you see on your gear. It doesn't apply and you're still gearing correctly. The rest of your gear, so necklace, cloak, weapons, rings, and trinkets, do not change, and as such, you can't go around and just equip anything. So your primary stat is Intellect. However, you don't need to gem or enchant your gear with this, and you don't really need to worry about focusing on it. As long as you pick up pieces of gear with Intellect on them, which as discussed earlier is easy for most pieces of gear, you should be good to go. However, there are some secondary stats on gear that you want to look out for. After Intellect, your most important stat is Multi-Strike. This grants you a chance to duplicate your spells, and as we gain more multi-strike from the stat than any other class, is great for the Elemental Shaman. Any piece of gear that has multi-strike on it is great for you, as long as it has intellect on it if it's not a main piece of gear, and if it is a main piece of gear, it's male. Next up in terms of stat priority is either crit or haste. Both of these stats are very close to one another in usefulness, and having a balance of the two will work great. Crit increases your chance to critically hit with your spells, and interacts with Lava Burst, which always critically hits regardless of your crit chance, in an actually interesting way now. Your crit will now increase the chance that your Lava Burst multi-strikes more than twice, meaning that you can potentially fire off 4 Lava Bursts with a single cast. Now haste increases your spell casting speed, lowers your global cooldown, and makes your flame shock deal damage faster. You don't have to aim for haste or crit individually, but going for equipment that has multi-strike and either crit or haste on it is a good idea. After all of these stats is Mastery. This is Molten Earth, and is a passive effect that has a chance to proc and deal damage to a single target over a few seconds after you've hit them with a spell. It also increases the damage of your Earthquake. This is pretty strong, but not as strong as multi-strike, haste, and crit. Finally, your weakest stat is Versatility. This new secondary stat increases the damage you deal and decreases the damage you take. It's not a bad stat, I just want to say that, and it will increase your damage. And when I say it's the weakest, it's not so by very much, so you can go with pieces of gear with Versatility on them, but it is not our strongest stat. When it comes to gear, go for Intellect first of all, make sure it has Intellect on it, and then go for Multi-Strike, and then Haste, Crit, Mastery, and Versatility in that order. When it comes to gemming your gear, you'll be doing this a lot less than you did before. Sockets are now a very rare bonus that you can get on gear, and every socket is always prismatic, meaning that there are no longer any socket bonuses, and any color gem can be inserted into them. As such, if you do get a gem socket, you should always gem it with a multi-strike Talidite. There is a stronger version of this called the Greater Multi-Strike Talidite, which should be used on raid level gear, but for the heroic stuff, you can feel free to just use the multi-strike Talidite if you're worried about your money. Next, enchants. Again, there are very few enchants in Warlords of Draenor, and each of these is unfortunately extremely expensive if you wish to buy them from the auction house. Right now, on my server, weapon enchants cost about 11,000 gold each. As such, I'd only suggest enchanting gear that you know you'll be keeping for a while, such as raid drops from non-LFR Highmaul. The enchants you should be using are, for your necklace, Gift of Multi-Strike. For your cloak, Gift of Multi-Strike. For your rings, Gift of Multi-Strike. Make sure you get one of these on your item level 680 ring as soon as you can. And for your weapon, well actually this is a bit of a choice. Mark of the Frostwolf is usually best because it grants extra multi-strike, but if the extra 500 multi-strike from the proc would put you over a 100% chance to multi-strike, which will get more likely as you gear up, then you should instead use Mark of the Thunderlord, which has a chance to increase your crit. Generally, you can go with either a one-hand and an off-hand weapon or a staff. Just go with whatever has the higher item level and gives you more of your most important stats. Either works. Make sure you just look at things and see what gives you more multi-strike, haste, and of course, crit. Now, before we move on, let's discuss the process of gearing. I've noticed quite a few people struggling with gearing up to get into heroics and then getting into raids. So this is the process you want to go through in order to get your character in gear that's ready for raiding. First, as you level up, if you're a leather worker, save up burnished leather and make for yourself 3 epic pieces of crafted gear. 2. Once you hit 100, do all of the Nagrand quest chain. It will offer you okay gear that you can use to get ready for heroics. 3. Make sure you kill as many rares as you can. Some of them can drop decent gear, especially the level 100 rares that can be found in the daily assault areas. 4. Save up Apexis crystals and buy gear from the vendors in Ashran. 5. If you've done a bit of all of this, then you should be in high enough gear to handle heroics. Jump into the Proving Grounds and complete silver to be able to queue. 6. Do as many heroics as you can. The gear that drops there is the stuff you'll be using to enter the first raid. 7. Make sure you continue to gather Apexis crystals, and if you're a leather worker, make yourself 3 pieces of crafted gear. If you have a piece of Apexis crystal gear, upgrade it using 10,000 more crystals into an epic. 8. Finish the legendary quest chain as soon as possible to get yourself a 680 ring. 9. Get yourself in as many pieces of heroic gear as you can, and push your item level to around 630. 10. Hop into any LFRs that you can to help supplement your gear. But remember that the gear should be used as a crutch to get you ready for raiding, and it should not be an end goal for you. Remember, LFR is not raiding. Once you hit about item level 630, you should be good to do Hymal on normal mode, and from there you can go into heroic and then slowly into mythic. These steps should get you into raiding at a fair pace. It may take some time, especially if you haven't started gathering crafting materials and if you pug the heroics. Tip, try to run the heroics with friends and guildies, it makes it much easier. But you'll get to raid level quickly enough. Now, let's talk talents and glyphs. So level 100 hasn't really affected our talent choices too much, but we do have a new tier of talents to play with, so let's get to it, starting with the first tier. Nature's Guardian, which increases your maximum health whenever you're hit by an attack that reduces your health to below 30%, isn't really that helpful unless you're getting hit by things that won't kill you in 2 hits, which isn't really that likely in raids. It's more of a PvP talent. The real problem here is that you don't have control over when it procs. Stone Bulwark Totem, which is a totem that grants you a shield and continues to recharge that shield for 30 seconds, generally isn't that helpful unless you're taking constant ticking damage, which can happen, and in that case, it is helpful. But in my opinion, it's not as helpful as the last talent in this tier, Astral Shift, which is a flat 40% damage reduction for 6 seconds. This is not on the global cooldown, and as such, is really helpful for when you want to avoid a burst of damage. This is my pick of the tier. Tier 2, Movement. Frozen Power has its uses, allowing you a Frost Shock to root a target in place. However, since Frost Shock shares a cooldown with your other shocks, and not that many enemies and raids can be rooted, this is incredibly situational. Earth Grab Totem, which is my pick here. This replaces Earthbind Totem, and instead of slowing enemies, the first time it pulses on an enemy, it will root them for 5 seconds. This is very helpful in a lot of situations, and can sort of replace Frozen Power's root temporarily, so I go with this most of the time. Finally, Windwalk Totem, which removes all slowing effects on the raid for 6 seconds and makes them immune to other slows. I haven't yet found a fight which this is useful on, but the second you see an opening, grab this totem and use it to make your raid very happy with you when you use it. Tier 3, the Totem tier. Call of the Elements is not really that helpful. It resets the cooldown on your totems with a base cooldown of 3 minutes or less, so it won't reset your elementals. It will, however, reset Healing Stream, Tremor, Grounding, Earthbind, or Earth Grab, and Capacitor totems. So this has utility, but it's just not worth using right now. Next up, Totemic Persistence, which allows you to place 2 of a totem at once, which sounds great until you realize that it does not allow you to do this with fire totems. This would be great, of course, if we could use our fire totems to allow us to have a fire elemental and a searing totem up at the same time, but it doesn't allow that, so it's not really that helpful. Finally, my pick of the tier, Totemic Projection. This allows you to move your totems instantly to a target location. The utility this provides is great. It allows for a long-range stun with Capacitor Totem, a long-range root with Earth Grab, and it allows you to reposition your Searing Totem if the boss moves out of its range. It also interacts with one of your level 100 talents. This is just my suggestion for the tier hands down. Tier 4, Damage. Elemental Mastery, a 2-minute cooldown 30% haste buff for 20 seconds, is really strong and quite powerful, and it's really what you should go for if you want maximum burst damage. Using it on cooldown is the best way to utilize it, but it will severely increase your damage at certain points if you decide to save it for a super important moment that you combine with, say, Bloodlust. Next, Ancestral Swiftness. This is a good talent for us, as the passive haste is useful and you can macro the instant cast mechanic to a lightning bolt or an earthquake. Not super amazing, but it is good, so you can pick this instead of Elemental Mastery if you want your damage to be smoother and less bursty, which is helpful in single target sustained fights. Finally, Echo of the Elements, which causes the next Frost Shock, Earthquake, or Lava Burst that you cast to not incur its cooldown. This unfortunately is not very good for any situation outside of mass AoE, which if you've watched the last guide I created, you will know is a terrible shame in my opinion. If you find yourself needing to layer Earthquake upon Earthquake to deal with tons of enemies for a long time, this talent will shine. But in any other situation, it falls behind Elemental Mastery and Ancestral Swiftness, so I apologize for that. Next tier, Healing. Now, this tier is still pants, unfortunately. Rushing Streams, which makes your Healing Stream totem heal for more and also heal another target, is useless, unfortunately. It's just so bad. Healing Stream doesn't heal for much, and although it can be nice to throw down one mid-combat, this talent just doesn't compare to the other 2 choices. Don't take it. Ancestral Guidance is my pick of the tier. When activated, the next 10 seconds of your damage and healing is copied and distributed amongst your raid. It's not the super amazing raid cooldown that it used to be, but it's free smart healing that you don't need to do anything else to use, so it's a pretty good talent. Next up, Conductivity. This basically makes your damaging spells increase the duration of your healing rain up to a cap of an extra 30 seconds. Now, healing rain doesn't heal for that much, but if the raid is stacked up constantly, like say, the Butcher, this can be pretty good. However, it doesn't compare to Ancestral Guidance in the vast majority of situations. Level 90 tier now. Here we have 3 talents that are actually pretty well balanced, which is nice. Before we discuss which is best, let's just go over what they do. Unleash Fury makes your Unleash Flame more powerful, increasing your Lightning Bolt damage by 30% and your Lava Burst damage by 10% for 10 seconds after casting it. This is a buff on yourself, not on an enemy, which is quite nice. Primal Elementalist, which is the second talent, turns your elementals into temporary pets that are very powerful. The Fire Elemental hits like a truck with this, a truck that's on fire, and has a whole bunch of auto-cast abilities that do extra damage. The Storm Elemental from the final tier also hits very hard at range, and has a few AoE knockup and movement speed increasing effects with this talent, which is great for things like challenge modes. Your Elemental can also drop what it's doing and channel in power on you, which offers you a slight benefit, such as increased damage. However, using this is a waste of damage because the increase is not nearly as strong as just letting the Elementals hit the enemies. Finally, Elemental Blast, which is a hard-hitting spell that increases either your crit, haste, mastery, or multi-strike for 8 seconds. It's a good part of the rotation and, with the addition of the multi-strike buff, has a chance to grant you a really great benefit. Okay, now which one of these should you pick? Thankfully, they're all very good, and you can use any of them and do pretty well. Unleashed Fury and Elemental Blast are practically the same in terms of the damage gain. However, Primal Elementalist adds a huge amount of burst to your rotation. So if you need to do a lot of damage very fast, then Primal Elementalist is the talent for you. And finally, the last tier. Now, each of these talents is pretty good, and each has its place. You'll probably find yourself going in between these talents if you're anything like me, trying to make the most of them. But if you want to know which provides the best DPS, then it is Storm Elemental Totem. Using it after your Fire Elemental Totem ends will net the best results. The Storm Elemental itself can be left alone to do its thing, just like the Fire Elemental. The other 2 talents are a little bit below Storm Elemental in terms of damage, but they have their place, and in some situations will shine. Elemental Fusion, which is a boring as all hell passive talent that increases the damage of your next shock by 40% whenever you use Lava Burst, stacking twice, is good for single target sustained damage. You don't need to track this in any kind of way, and it doesn't change how you play in the slightest. Liquid Magma, on the other hand, is great for AoE situations, as it makes your Fire Totem go berserk and launch globs of magma at enemies that explode for AoE damage. As I said, this is great for AoE damage when enemies are clumped up, as each explosion will hit multiple enemies. But be warned that this ability does not care about crowd control, and will happily break the CC of anything you're in combat with. Remember that, and be careful about when and where you place your totem when using this ability. Putting it about 20 yards behind you can work if you want to avoid breaking CC. How do you do that? Totemic Projection. Right, now on to glyphs. There's really only one necessary glyph, as it has always been, and that is Glyph of Chain Lightning. This increases the number of targets that Chain Lightning hits while minorly reducing its damage. This is great when you're doing any kind of AoE involving more than 3 enemies, as not only does it do more damage, but the extra enhanced Chain Lightning stacks will dramatically increase the damage of your next Earthquake. Other than that, you can use what you want. A few honourable mentions though. Glyph of Fire Elemental, which reduces the cooldown and duration of your Fire Elemental totem by 50%, meaning that your Elemental will be available more often, but for less amount of time. This can be helpful when the boss is only attackable constantly for a short period of time. Glyph of Grounding Totem, which reflects a spell rather than absorbing it. This can actually be used on some boss abilities, which is quite cool. Glyph of Spiritwalker'S Grace, which increases its duration. This is especially good with the removal of Lightning Bolt while moving. Glyph of Thunder, which reduces the cooldown of Thunderstorm. Good if you need to do constant knockbacks. Glyph of Capacitor Totem, which reduces the time it takes for the totem to charge up and unleash its stun. Glyph of Flame Shock, which heals you each time Flame Shock deals damage. Glyph of Shamanistic Rage, which makes the ability dispel a magical effect on you. This is great for helping the healers when they have to dispel. Glyph of Earthquake, which makes the spell also slow enemies. This can be great for keeping enemies inside your quake and for simultaneously slowing them down. Finally, Glyph of Thunderstorm, which is a minor glyph that removes the knockback component of the spell. This can be great if you only want to use the spell for damage, which isn't really that often, if at all, but I would argue against using this glyph either way, as good use of Thunderstorm can save raid members' lives. Now, let's move on to your rotation and your cooldown usage. While your rotation is pretty simple, the Elemental Shaman has a lot of different sources of damage, meaning that screwing up one part of the rotation could pretty heavily lower your damage. So make sure you're constantly practicing your various rotations in order to get every aspect of it nailed down. Let's start with your single target mid-fight rotation. This is what you'll be doing the most. Your priorities are as such. If you have talented into Unleashed Fury, then cast Unleash Flame on cooldown. Keep this buff up as much as you can. Cast Lava Burst if the spell can land before Flame Shock expires. Watch out for Lava Surge resetting the cooldown of Lava Burst. Keep Lava Burst on cooldown as well. Refresh Flame Shock if the spell has 9 or less seconds remaining. The remaining duration of the Flame Shock will be added to the new one, so you won't waste any ticks. Always keep Flame Shock active. Cast Earth Shock if you have 17 or more stacks of Lightning Shield. You can cast this at higher stacks, but 17 is a safe number to avoid wasting potential stacks. If you have talented into Elemental Blast, then cast it on cooldown, but prioritize Flame Shock, Lava Burst, and a 17 plus stack of Earth Shock before this. Refresh your Searing Totem if it has less than 15 seconds remaining, and it will see use for at least 30 seconds. Cast Lightning Bolt as your filler spell. While moving, use Earth Shock, Unleash Flame, and instant cast Lava Bursts to keep up your damage. Also consider refreshing your Searing Totem if you're moving and you have nothing else to use. Remember that Spiritwalker's Grace allows you to do your full rotation on the move. As a note, you will gain DPS by having 1 extra Flame Shock on another enemy that doesn't need to die right now. This means more Lava Surge procs, which means more damage to your main target. But more than 1 extra Flame Shock, so more than 2 in total, is not really worth it. If you're up against 2 to 4 enemies, all of which need to be damaged simultaneously, such as multiple bosses or a boss and its adds, then do the rotation as described above, but simply replace Lightning Bolt with Chain Lightning as your filler spell. Make sure you Flame Shock every enemy as well. If you're up against multiple enemies, all of which need to die, then start with a single Chain Lightning, which needs to hit at least 5 enemies. This will give you 5 stacks of enhanced Chain Lightning. Just hit as many targets as you can with this first Chain Lightning. Then, use Earthquake underneath your enemies. Then, use either Chain Lightning or Lava Beam if you're in Ascendance. Then use Earth Shock on one of your targets if you're at 17 stacks of Lightning Shield. Cast Chain Lightning as your filler spell, and make sure you refresh your Earthquake as soon as you can, as long as it has as many stacks of enhanced Chain Lightning as it can possibly have. Don't use Thunderstorm unless there are more than 10 enemies and you have the minor glyph. Otherwise, knocking the enemies away will reduce everyone's damage, your own included. Now, let's talk about your opener for a single target fight. Right before the pull begins, use Unleash Flame to buff yourself. Then, pre-pot, so use a Drainic Intellect Potion, and put down your Fire Elemental Totem. As the tanks go into attack, a second or so before the fight begins, start casting either Lightning Bolt or Elemental Blast, depending on if you have the talent. At this point, as soon as your Elemental Blast lands, you'll want to Bloodlust. But only if the fight calls for Bloodlust at the beginning of the fight. Make sure you know when to Bloodlust. After you Bloodlust, or you choose not to, use your haste cooldowns, such as Elemental Mastery, and if you're part of the glorious Troll Master race, Berserking. Then apply Flame Shock. It will deal its damage much more regularly with your haste cooldowns active, so use it right after you've activated them. After that, cast a single Lava Burst. This will put it on cooldown. Then, if you have talented into it, use Liquid Magma, but only if you don't need the AoE damage within 45 seconds. Then, use your Ascendance and start spamming away with Lava Burst. If you reach 20 stacks of Fulmination while you're in Ascendance, cast Earth Shock, then continue using Lava Burst. Once your Ascendance ends, go into your single target rotation. Once Fire Elemental disappears, apply your Storm Elemental Totem if you've chosen it, and your Searing Totem. Then continue your rotation as explained earlier. So next we'll talk about a few tips for your rotation. First of all, know your A, B, C. This is a common theme for casters and it is vitally important. A, B, C. Always be casting. Never, ever just be standing there doing nothing. Unlike the melee, you don't have the safety net of melee attacks to keep dealing damage. If you're not casting, you're useless. So always cast something. If you don't have things to kill, heal people. If you don't have things to kill or people to heal, refresh your totems. Use Healing Rain to prepare for healing, and Earthquake to prepare for damage. And remember, never stop casting a spell to cast another. This is a waste of the spell's cast time, and it is a big damage loss. Of course, stop casting to avoid mechanics, because if you're dead, you're not doing any damage, but don't cancel one spell for another, even if the second spell is much stronger. Next up, know what you're casting next. Your rotation is a priority system that is fairly predictable. Track the cooldowns of your important spells: Lava Burst, Earthquake, Elemental Blast, Unleash Flame, Liquid Magma, your elementals. Find ways to track your Lightning Shield stacks, how long Flame Shock has left on your target, things like that. Get the information on screen, think ahead, and know what you're going to cast before you do so. As soon as you push the button, the spell is essentially casted. You don't need to do anything else with that spell. Think forward. What's next? What's the duration left on your Searing Totem? How long does Flame Shock have left? Thinking ahead as much as possible is important. I generally tend to know what the next 2 or 3 spells I'm going to cast will be. Combine this with the encounter mechanics and good knowledge of them, and you'll be dancing around the enemy's attacks while pumping out tons of spells and damage. Finally, learn your rotation. By this, I don't mean just know it in your head, I mean master it. Make it muscle memory by doing it over and over and over again. Spend time with the training dummies, do pugs, dailies, whatever you have to do in order to do your shaman's rotation constantly, to learn your spells, where they're keybound, and how the cooldowns of your abilities tend to mesh at any given point. Make sure you can do your rotation without even thinking about it. That way, you'll be ready to put your mind at work, avoiding mechanics and thinking about strategy, rather than concentrating on your rotation. I can't teach you muscle memory, you have to obtain this yourself. The only way to do that is to do your rotation endlessly. Next, let's discuss your cooldown usage. Bloodlust. Oh, Bloodlust, it is the best raid cooldown in the whole game. Nothing compares to it. So know when to use it. Each boss fight has a moment where the raid will need to be bloodlusted, and it may not necessarily be at the start or the end of the fight. Know exactly when to bloodlust through learning encounter mechanics and by asking your raid when they would like you to bloodlust. As of this recording, I do not have any of my LFR guides available because LFR is not actually available at the moment, but as soon as the difficulty unlocks, I will get those videos made and annotations will appear on screen right now to guides for each wing, letting you know when to bloodlust and what the mechanics of the wings are. It is vitally important that you know when to bloodlust. Your raid leaders will praise you for using this spell correctly, so learn it and know when to use it. Fire Elemental Totem and Storm Elemental Totem, our big cooldown totems, will update dynamically throughout their duration. By this I mean that the actual elemental summoned gains power depending on your buffs, including temporary ones. So if you're bloodlusted, if you're using elemental mastery, if you've got trinket procs, all while the elemental is out, its stats will be updated to give it more damage, so try to time your cooldowns together to make the most out of this. Your Earth Elemental, unfortunately, is kind of pants in terms of damage. It's not really worth its global cooldown at the moment, so it's more for utility. It can taunt a bunch of adds, but it won't work on any raid bosses. It has pretty low health as well, so unless you're in a 5-man, this totem won't see too much use. Do remember it's there though, it might save you at some point. And additionally, since they share cooldowns, you should always use your Fire Elemental Totem first, then your Storm Elemental, and only use your Earth Elemental for emergency tank situations, which, to be honest, are quite unlikely. Finally, Ascendance is great, but to get the most out of it, you have to think. Since you want to spam Lava Burst during this time, you need to have a few things in mind before you hit the Ascendance button. First of all, make sure your Flame Shock has at least 15 seconds remaining, so that you don't have to waste a global cooldown refreshing it during Ascendance. Secondly, make sure you've already got Lava Burst on cooldown before you hit Ascendance. This just gives you more Lava Bursts overall. Third, if you've taken Elemental Blast, make sure you cast that before Ascendance as well, to buff yourself for the burst of damage. Fourth, if you've got cooldowns such as Elemental Mastery, it's a great idea to try and combo them with Ascendance for lots of extra damage. This is much more damage than just activating them sporadically by themselves would be. Fifth, make sure you can actually cast during Ascendance. Use it when you bloodlust for the extra damage, or at any point when you can deal more damage to the boss. However, make sure you can actually get all of your lava bursts off. If you have to move a lot during the fight, combo Spiritwalker's Grace with Ascendance to be able to cast while moving. If you don't have Spiritwalker's Grace available, try to time Ascendance during a point in the fight where there isn't much movement. And of course, make sure you hit your Earth Shock when you need to dump your Fulmination stacks, even during Ascendance. This is a great idea to do while moving if you don't have Spiritwalker's Grace available. Right, let's move on to some useful macros and add-ons. These aren't 100% necessary to master your shaman, but they are very helpful and I would definitely suggest them. So, macros. I only have a couple of these that I really use, but they can be quite helpful. First of all, an Ascendance macro. This macro just casts Ascendance and all of my cooldowns that stack on top of it. Berserking, Elemental Mastery, and Spiritwalker'S Grace. I don't use this macro often, I more use it for restoration than elemental, but combining Ascendance and Spiritwalker'S Grace into a single macro can be very helpful. Next, a haste buff. This allows me to just cast Berserking and Elemental Mastery at the same time. Next, a helpful Wind Shear macro. This stops whatever spell you're casting and casts Wind Shear instead. This can be very helpful in an oh crap moment where you really need to get out that clutch interrupt. Finally, a Searing Totem macro. This casts Searing Totem, but will fail if you have Fire Elemental active. This can stop you from accidentally wasting a huge cooldown by hitting the wrong button, and can be incredibly helpful. So those are all of my macros. You don't need any of them, but each can be helpful in their own way. Next, add-ons. There are some very useful ones out here. First of all, get a boss mod. Either deadly boss mods or bigwigs, some kind of add-on. Either one of these will help you figure out what's going on in a fight, when it's going to happen, and where it's happening. It's practically mandatory if you're in a raiding guild, and it helps during LFR as well, so grab a boss mod add-on. Next, weak auras. This add-on is insane. It's so good. If you only ever download one add-on, make it weak auras. In a nutshell, this add-on allows you to create timers, icons, effects, and animations on your screen for just about anything you can dream of. Tracking buffs, debuffs, cooldowns, internal cooldowns, stacks, procs. It's insanely helpful and can give you so much information. The only downside is that it's quite complicated. However, I have created a guide for it. You can click on screen now or use the links in the description to open the video. If you do click on screen, don't worry about it closing this video, it will open in a new tab. Next up, a good clean cast bar will help you to chain cast your spells effectively. Quartz is my suggestion here. Pretty easy to set up and customize, this cast bar add-on allows you to do just about anything with all cast bars. From your own, to your targets, to your pets, to your focused cast bar. You can find information about setting up Quartz as part of my basic UI guide, which again you can find in the description or on screen now. Once more, it will open in a new tab. And finally, a good nameplate add-on will help you target your enemies and even track debuffs on them. I use tidy plates for this, and you can find information about setting it up in my advanced UI guide, which goes over streamlining a user interface. Again, it will open in a separate tab. Now, we've gone over a whole bunch of things so far. What the Elemental Shaman does, how it's changed, how to gear, gem, enchant, talent, glyph, and play it. But so far, this guide has only focused on the damage dealer aspects of the Shaman. However, for someone who just wants to deal tons of damage, the Elemental Shaman might be a bit disappointing. Why? Well, because unless you severely outgear everyone else around you, which is very unlikely, you're not going to be top damage dealer. Will very likely be middle of the road instead. This may sound like bad news, but really a great Elemental Shaman is not someone who only deals damage. Let me tell you a quick story to illustrate what I mean. So I was in the middle of my first heroic Orkindoon run. We were on the third boss, Azakel, the big demon green guy, and his swarms of demons were overwhelming the group. The tank was just hit by Fell Lash, which is a really hard-hitting ability, and he was dropped to about 20% health. We were in wipe territory, right? The healer got hit by a blazing imp. He ran into one by accident and was disoriented. He couldn't do anything. It was over. I could have very easily just kept dealing damage, doing my thing, and trying to kill things, being your average DPSer. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped up. I dropped what I was doing, targeted the tank, and started spam healing him with Healing Surge. Over and over and over again, I cast it, draining my mana incredibly quickly. During that time, the tank stayed alive. He went to 10% and then stayed there. Every time he dipped, I got him back to 10%. During this time, while the healer was disoriented and the tank was in major trouble, I kept the group alive to the point that the healer could recover and we successfully killed the boss. Moments like that, where a problem is placed before you and you use your toolkit to solve it, are some of the greatest moments you can ever have as an Elemental Shaman. The whole point of this is the Elemental Shaman, and really the Shaman in general, is a fantastic problem solver. They just kind of weren't affected by the ability pruning. Think about it. A nasty spell is about to slam into the tank. Grounding Totem deals with it entirely. A big fear effect is about to come in. Tremor Totem to break it on the entire group. The tank dies and your group needs a few more precious seconds. Earth Elemental to hold the line. Wind Shock, a reliable, low cooldown interrupt. at range, Earthbind and Earthgrab Totem for mass rooting, Frost Shock and Frozen Core for kiting, Hex for good CC that doesn't break as easily as a sap or a sheep or a trap, Purge for removing magic effects from enemies, Shamanistic Rage and its glyph for self-dispelling, Cleanse Spirit for curse removal, Thunderstorm for mass knockback. That doesn't even cover the potential uses of Water Walking or Farsight or Earthquake. Not only that, but we have healing capabilities as well. Healing Stream Totem, Healing Rain, Healing Surge. We still have them, and we can help heal people who need it. We have so many answers in our toolkit that we can take on any situation that a 5-man or a raid might throw at us. Remember, 5-mans in Warlords of Draenor are tough. Having such a versatile toolkit is one of the greatest things an Elemental Shaman can bring to a group or a raid, and that's not even mentioning challenge modes. Imagine just how much value you can get out of your toolkit in a challenge mode, when these things really matter. If you're in a raid team, chances are that you're going to be out DPS'd by the pure damage dealer classes. Let them have their fun is what I say, because although the warlocks and the mages and the rogues and the hunters may be able to pull out more damage from their hat right now, we have so much more available to us straight off the bat. You can distinguish yourself as a great shaman and a great raider by not only having these answers, but using them reliably. Being the guy that your raid can lean on in so many situations. Here comes the AoE Fear. Is your Tremor Totem ready? Yep, I got it. Okay, you're on the interrupt list. No worries, Windshot can deal with that. Knock back this group. Run in Thunderstorm. Okay, you're on Curse duty. Cleanse Spirit, Cleanse Spirit, Cleanse Spirit. Where's that patrol? Don't worry, I'm a Farsight and check. Okay, it's about 20 yards away. We should probably wait to pull. Oh god, there's just dispels all over the place. Don't worry, I can dispel myself. Alright, there's a magic effect on the boss. You're going to be first to dispel it because it's range. That mob needs to be kited. Don't worry, I can handle that with Frozen Core. We need an AoE root on those ads. No worries, Earth Grab, Totemic Projection, done. Oh god, he's going to get off an Empowered Fireball. No worries, here's a Grounding Totem. Every ounce of healing we can get, please make sure you can chip in. Alright, Healing Stream Totem, Healing Rain, Healing Surge, I got this. And on top of all of that, as you gear up, you'll start doing more and more and more damage, until you can actually start to contest the big shot damage dealing warlocks, mages, rogues, hunters, or whoever else. But do you get my point? Being an Elemental Shaman is about much more than dealing out damage. Being able to do that while simultaneously helping out your raid in so many different ways is what will earn you your raid spot. Forget the top guilds and then min-maxing while stacking classes, alright? Most raiding guilds won't do that. Just because you're middle of the road in terms of damage right now, doesn't mean you can't be one of the most important cogs in your raid team's machine. Use all of your abilities to their maximum potential and be a turret of pain for your enemies, while at the same time supporting your raid team. And believe me, they'll beg you to stay on your shaman. Now, time to speak advanced stuff. This is for shaman who know their class and who may be trying to squeeze more out of it. Over my time as a shaman, I've discovered, either by myself, from guides, live streams, or articles about shaman, many little things you can do to help be more awesome. So, first, Flame Shock. It ticks approximately every 3 seconds, depending on your haste, and has a chance to proc your Lava Surge. As such, when Lava Surge procs, you have about 3 seconds before it can proc again, potentially wasting another Lava Surge. For this reason, you can time your abilities and squeeze out another spell before you waste a proc. Again, this is just more of a reason to never stop casting a spell. Stopping a spell is never a good idea, so don't do so. Next, Pre-pot. It's so important. Use a Dranic Intellect Potion right before a pull begins to trigger the 1-minute cooldown so that you can use it again with your next Ascendance, and always use a potion during Bloodlust. Come to every raid with flasks and potions galore, enough for 2 potions per pull. Every bit of damage counts. Next, know how fights work so you have something ready for every single burst of damage. A great Elemental Shaman has the ability to be a tough bugger, and by cleverly using Astral Shift for a burst, then Shamanistic Rage for another, then a Guidance, then a Health Stone, then repeat with whatever's off cooldown, you'll be one of the last raiders to die to raid damage. If an Elemental Shaman dies, it's because they've buggered up. This isn't as potent as it used to be, but you can still be very difficult to kill, and you can still support the group through phases of intense damage. Next, don't use Glyph of Thunderstorm if you know what you're doing. So many people rattle on about this glyph, and how Thunderstorm is pointless if it isn't glyph, blah 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 blah. These people are just talking out of their butts. Thunderstorm's knockback is awesome! It's a great interrupt and movement ability. Use it to knock a ranged mob into melee, or use it to stop something from casting, or use it to knock back an enemy that's about to hit someone. Clutch Thunderstorms save lives, and can be incredibly helpful. But don't use it too much, and use it smartly. Be the guy who, when they uses Thunderstorm, helps the group, not the guy who hinders it. Next up, Glyph of Chain Lightning is wonderful, but it's not effective on fights where it will only hit 3 targets, so make sure you swap the glyph for another when you know it will be useful to do so. Speaking of switching, your talents make you very versatile. Swapping talents in your level 90 and level 100 tiers will allow you to adjust your toolkit to various fights. Lots of burst required? Run Primal Elementalist and Storm Elemental Totem. Loads of AoE needed? Elemental Blast and Liquid Magma. Sustained single target damage with quite a lot of movement? Unleashed Fury and Elemental Fusion. You can tailor yourself to each fight by changing up your talents, so make sure you do so, and make sure you always have a stack of Tomes of the Clear Mind to help keep yourself versatile. Next, if you have a single global cooldown available and you have to get somewhere, Ghost Wolf it. It's an awesome movement spell, and make sure you put it on a good key binding so you can weave in and out of it on the fly. You may not be the first to any particular location, but you will never be last, and you will always be there in time. Additionally, if you have 2 global cooldowns with which to move, Ghost Wolf and then Unleash Flame to go even faster. Chain Lightning is awesome, it really is, but don't rely on it. Watch how fights develop. If lots of enemies are dying, make sure you swap from Chain Lightning to your normal rotation as soon as it becomes viable. Wasting time with Chain Lightning is a bad idea, and it's a mark of a bad shaman. Also, as you Chain Lightning and things die, make sure you continuously target swap so that you never have a failed Chain Lightning cast on a dead enemy. Fulmination is next. Every time you use Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Elemental Blast, or Lava Burst, it will add at least 1 stack. Potentially, due to multi-strikes, it can add anywhere from 2 to 4, so be prepared for your Lightning Shield stacks to jump up. It will happen a lot if you're using Chain Lightning on AoE. Again, this is why 17 is a good number to aim for, so you never go over the cap and waste stacks. Next, your Flame Shock. You can clip this by up to 9 seconds. The extra time will be added to the new Flame Shock, so you have much more time with which to play when clipping Flame Shock and Earth Shock. It makes the class play much smoother. Take advantage of this fact. And finally, Liquid Magma. Be careful with this spell, because it can and will break CC, not by just AoEing things near the CC, but by firing bolts directly at the CC'd enemy. It has a 40-yard range, just like Searing Totem, and generally CC'd enemies will be a bit further away than active ones, so put your Searing Totem behind you. If you're on average about 10 yards away from your enemies, put your Searing Totem about 30 to 35 yards behind you if you can. This way, the magma globs from Liquid Magma will hit the enemies you want it to hit, but the CC'd enemies will be too far away for the Liquid Magma to hit them, and your Searing Totem will still be able to shoot at its target, so you won't lose damage. Go too far and both the Searing Totem and the Liquid Magma will become useless, so make sure you place it very carefully. Practice makes perfect here. Okay, to wrap things up, let's discuss your main goal. Your main goal as an Elemental Shaman is not to be a damage dealer. It's not to be an off healer. It's not to be a hybrid. It's to be a raider. Your goal is to help your raid succeed. It's vitally important that, especially during progress, you don't whore the damage meters with Chain Lightning and Earthquake. Think about how your damage can be best applied, and what else you can do to help the group or raid succeed. Use your vast toolkit to help your team beat the boss that they're stuck on, because everyone in your raid is there to kill bosses, get loot, and enjoy themselves. You can help that by being a great shaman that can output good numbers, while simultaneously healing, dealing with mechanics, bloodlusting at the right time, using your vast toolkit to help control the situation, and using your knowledge of the fights to help the rest of the raid succeed. You can do this because you're ranged and you have a great view of the situation. All of this you can do while being fun, friendly, and enjoyable to be around. The shaman has been shot in the leg. Right now it's stumbling a little, yes, but given time, it will recover. Our damage will increase, both through gear and through attention from Blizzard, and we'll turn our hobble into a jog, and that jog into a sprint, and we'll end up running much faster than people might think. We'll be laughing at the people that mocked us for our low damage in this early stage of the expansion, and we'll charge ahead, leading our raid teams to success with our great damage, our knowledge of the fights, and our awesome toolkit of utilitarian spells. The people that disagree, the people that think that the damage meters are everything, that their toolkit is only for dealing damage, they are one of 3 things: ignorant, stupid, or just assholes. Be a great raider. That is the most important piece of advice that any guide can ever give you. Be friendly, responsible, and awesome. And regardless of your class, you will be an asset to your raid. Master your rotation through hours of practice, and make it muscle memory. Use your support abilities, because they're all going to be really, really helpful as you progress. Finally, and most importantly, enjoy yourself. You're in a game. Master it if you can, but always, always enjoy yourself. Surround yourself with people you like to raid with, who will listen to your terrible jokes, who will chat and laugh with you through the evening. Enjoy all of your wonderful spells, and most importantly, enjoy your time in World of Warcraft. That's it for this guide. I hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful. If you have any thoughts, comments, suggestions, or feedback, you can contact me using the links in the description, or you can just leave a comment. As always, I offer my heartfelt thanks to those who contribute to the channel's continued existence through the Patreon system, with special thanks going out to Ricka Bailey, Jason DeBoard, Henrik Lundqvist, Sly Knight, Blaz Golk, Sebastian Dormel, Cody Wyatt, John Dolan, Till Altmans, and Connor Hu. Thank you very much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck as Master of the Elements. The Elemental Shaman is, as the name suggests, a master of the elements. You'll be using the power of air. You'll be oh god. The power of okay. You'll be Fuck.